in short, there's several different things that are coming together that in my mind create the risk or the threat of something like a super intelligent AI system.
Okay.
And there's 4 or 5 pieces. Each on its own wouldn't necessarily be a problem, but in combination, they create a risk and an uncertainty and a problem.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to 21st Century Renaissance. I'm your host, Dr. Michael Opiana, and I am joined by my friend Darren McKee.
Hi, everyone.
Darren is gracious enough to be joining us all the way from Canada, here in person today in Krakow. And we're going to be spending some time talking about Darren's new book, Uncontrollable, a book about the dangers, about the threat of AI and how to save the world on account of it. And we're also going to talk a bit about his podcast, Reality Check.
Yes,
so Darren, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you here all the way amid this heat wave.
Yes, this is why we're in shorts.
Yes. If you haven't noticed, both of us are wearing shorts.
AI timelines are short, and we really wanted to convey.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So very interested to talk a bit about AI with you. So right, 21st Century Renaissance, we're thinking about in part, right, how culture in general can shift by introducing new technologies, how not only just how a new technology can offer some sort of benefit or danger or something like that in and of itself, but also perhaps how it extends into the realm of our lives as human beings. So I want to ask you a bit about AI in terms of how you see this potentially shaping us, shaping our life together, and maybe not our life together, but life in general, right? Society.
Yeah.
And hearing more specifically about the problems that you yourself are thinking about with respect to the dangers of AI. So maybe let's start with that last point. What are the dangers of AI? I mean, isn't ChatGPT great? Like, we've got these large language models,
Sure.
Midjourney giving us all kinds of kooky pictures. Like, what's the story?
Yeah. So I guess there's present dangers, and then there's potential future dangers.
Okay.
My book's a bit about both, but more about potential future dangers.
Okay.
So I guess you could say currently we have these wonderful new toys, which are going to be used in all sort of fantastical ways, but already we're seeing some of the risks, some of the harms, right? You have audio scams being done using AI.
Okay.
Someone simulates a voice, they call a parent or a grandparent pretending to be that person's child or grandchild, and money has already been scammed out of people. This has already happened.
Okay.
So my recommendation is have a password with your family that only you know.
Okay.
Now, ideally, of course, if you get a call from an unknown number, you say, call me back, but usually it's an emergency. I lost my phone. There's a rationale, right? This has also happened in some corporations. There are also nefarious and terrible applications you can download, which remove the clothing of people.
Oh.
This is already happening in some US schools. So you take a photo, say, a boy takes a photo of a girl, and press a button, and now she's naked. Now, it's a simulated version of it, but because the systems are so sophisticated, it approximates probably what this individual would look like, and this is causing massive harm, as you can imagine.
Yes.
This has already happened, right? And then we haven't even gotten to like the potential increase in cyber attacks, and many other issues.
Okay. All right. So.
But then there's a larger problem.
All right. Please continue.
One thing at a time. Okay, so. In short, there's several different things that are coming together that in my mind create the risk or the threat of something like a super intelligent AI system.
Okay.
And there's 4 or 5 pieces. Each on its own wouldn't necessarily be a problem, but in combination, they create a risk and an uncertainty and a problem. And so, things are moving very fast, exponential growth. We're living in exponential times. And that just means like the curve's going way up, computational power is increasing, computer chips are getting faster, which means computers are getting more powerful, and that means they're usually getting more capable.
Okay.
So the capabilities are what's key here. And when you start thinking about extrapolating that curve out, you think, well, it doesn't necessarily mean you can just follow a trend line, but it is a decent guide for what might happen.
Okay.
This is all about what could happen, right? I'm not saying there's a definite problem, but there's a maybe problem. So first, exponential growth, things changing fast. And then we also have issues of alignment. Can we get these systems to do what we want them to do?
Okay.
And well, of course we can. We built them, right? but they aren't being built like roads and bridges are being built, where
Okay.
everyone knows what every piece does.
Yeah.
I think people are under the impression that, well, surely these really smart people building these systems, they know exactly how they work, and it's not quite that way.
Okay.
It's more like they're grown rather than built
Okay.
as an AI system. And so with that, like in a way, why machine learning, why this the paradigm that has made AI so powerful, has been so effective is we've managed to find out ways, developing algorithms, to outsource the learning to the machine, to the system. And so obviously we're giving it information, lots of data, there's tweaks, there's guidance and so on, but the learning is happening in the system itself, which is inspired by how the human brain works.
Okay.
So I'm sort of divaricating all over the place here, but your brain has lots and lots of cells or neurons, and the neurons, when they fire, you do certain things. When your neurons fire, you have thoughts and feelings, and you move your hand around, and that's how your body works. And there's a large neural network that is how your brain directs your body to do things and takes information. Similarly, there are artificial neural networks in these systems. All that to say is that we don't know exactly how the systems work, and we can see problems, as the ones I just mentioned, it's not doing what we want, but also there's these sort of little, we'll call them little glitches or little hidden weaknesses.
Okay.
One example is one system, if you put in the word poem repeatedly, it started giving out personal information.
Huh.
Right, there's no human, you're like poem, you're like, okay, well this is someone's address. Like it just doesn't, it doesn't work that way. So there's these quirky things, right? It was an example in my book where it's asked, it's like, can you give me examples of sexual harassment cases from like law professors in the United States with citations?
Okay.
And it says like, sure, here you go, right? And it says like, oh, there's this, I can't remember the exact university, professor from University X was accused of sexual harassment on this trip to Alaska, and here's like the citation from, we'll say it's the Washington Post.
Sure.
And it looks like it's legitimate, right? There's even a quote, pull quote from the Washington Post. It never happened. There is no Washington Post article.
Yeah.
The professor does exist, but was at a different university, never made a trip to Alaska, never had any incident.
Okay.
So these are not truth detection systems. They're not truth reveal systems. They can be, but it's not like you're looking up something on Google, which has its own problems, especially lately. But I meant more that people put information in, or they make a request, and they think what comes back is true, and that's not necessarily the case. I mean, that's a glimpse of a line. Maybe we'll talk more about it.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So just to sort of recapitulate this. No, this is great.
No,
this
I
is
realize
great.
it's expanding.
No, there's plenty of us to talk, plenty for us to talk about here. But let me just make sure that I've got sort of the main problems with respect to alignment that you're pointing out here, but not just alignment, but okay. So on the one hand, we have sort of basic sort of homegrown nefarious purposes that we encountered perhaps on a similar level when the internet became widely available, or cellular phones became widely available, and sort of harvesting people's data and then using that for scams, or I can remember when early 2000s, I was in middle school, high school, something like that. Oh, somebody did some Photoshop stuff to this particular girl from this class and circulated it, and so there have been things like that. But now it's like, okay, maybe this can be a lot more accurately represented. It can happen faster. It can be a lot more deceptive in terms of its plausibility, or how it can convince us. Like when we gave this example of this phone scam. I've seen memes about this too come through the Instagram feed, stuff like, wait a second, what's the name of our eldest cat? Right. Well, you don't need to. Why do I need to tell you that? You need to. All right. Yeah. See it. Right. Yeah. Okay. So we have these sort of a new round of kind of the deep fake kind of scam stuff, but it's just a lot more convincing now with AI. So we've got that on one level. The second issue, it seems, that you're pointing to is this kind of black box issue with AI. So the brain has this. Brain sciences in general are about trying to figure out how the brain works. Yes. Because we're strapped with this thing, we're users in a certain sense. Yes. We inhabit the software. I mean, it's likely not entirely appropriate to use a computational or computer digital analogy for the brain, but at least it gives us the sense is there. It's some way for us to make a comparison. We inhabit kind of the software, we're in the midst of the brain, but how do you figure out how the brain works while you're inside of it, kind of a thing. That's what all of these, especially these fields of neuroscience, behavioral psychology, behavioral biology, things like this, have emerged over the past century to answer these types of questions. Okay, but now we have intelligences that are similar, maybe in their pattern or form, to the way that a brain works or neural networks work or things like this, but not based in an actual the neurobiological architecture. Now it's based in this digital framework that we ourselves have built, but we've still allowed these systems, or the way that we've designed these systems, make sense. How could they educate themselves? All right, well, if we allow them, they have this incredible computational power. If we allow them to educate themselves on data that we feed them, they'll be able to educate themselves faster and potentially more effectively than we could do it if we did it brick by brick, something like that.
Right.
But now, of course, we don't actually know how they're wired because they wired themselves in a certain way. Yes. And so there's a bit of a task of, all right, well, now we have to study the things that we've made to figure out what exactly we've made and how they've grown themselves. So there's some question marks in there, and that's perhaps concerning in the sense of, well, we don't know what they're doing.
Yes, this is a bit of a what lies beneath.
Yes, okay, all right. So, and then the third thing is this alignment problem that you've pointed to, in the sense of, okay, we have. It sounds principally like the examples you're using are from large language models. Yes. So we've trained, as far as I understand this, as an utter complete layman on the subject, right? We've trained these large language models on corpora of data. Like, here's language in a textual form, available online. Go, teach yourself language. And they perhaps do a very good job of approximating the way that language looks.
Yes.
But because they're not human beings, right? They're aiming at an abstracted form of our language, right? They're aiming at this one subsection of human existence that emerges from us, and saying, like, okay, I have to assimilate this into me without all of the other human stuff, right? Just as we, in a certain sense, live inside our nervous system lives inside our bodies, and then there's an environment outside of that, and there's these different layers, right? Okay, but with these large language models, if they're homing in or honing themselves just on representations of language as it is available as data out in the ether, out in the information space, they're not necessarily inclined to learn what truth is, since if we think about the human condition, we pursue truth based on some values that are embodied. Hey, this body is going to stop working if we don't get food now. Well, how do you know that that's the right thing to do? I'm pretty sure, because if I don't, I'll die, right? There are different kind of ways that truth can become embodied. When if you're separated from a body, you have, I don't know, how do you figure out what truth is? How do you figure out the truth of language without that kind of thing? So do I understand the way that you're representing that correctly?
So there's a lot of interesting things to touch off. So how about we come back to alignment more broadly? And I'll quickly say, I should have rounded up my point in a summary first. We're living in exponential times. Alignment is an issue. We may not be able to control these things if they get away from us. And all of this creates a risk. That's the main thesis. There's a lot of uncertainty. We don't know what's going to happen, but there's enough of a reason to be concerned that we should be prudent and act with more safety-minded protocols in place. Now, what you said is, a variety of things you said are interesting. So one is that these systems do mainly predict one word at a time. Now, sometimes people use that, it's a description, I think it's an accurate description, pejoratively though, versus look how amazing they are, even though they're only doing one word at a time. So it's kind of it's not really that impressive or important because it's only doing this. You're like, well, a lot of people also do language one word at a time,
Yeah.
right? If you try to guess exactly how your sentence is going to end before you get there, most people can't.
Yeah.
Because you don't like, I'm going to decide on the perfect sentence and now I'm going to release it after.
Yeah,
it
exactly.
doesn't work that way, right?
Yeah.
You're just kind of stumbling through it, and that's why once in a while it just doesn't come out right.
Yeah.
But rarely does someone say, you know, I was interested in this book, Banana. Like, it just doesn't, you know, something.
Yeah. The sorts of errors.
Yes. But there's another point, which is that when you said about, you know, the survival inclination of a human is one aspect of truth as you were framing it. Do these systems have any notion of survival? And the thought is, at the moment, not really. But the concern is, as they become more capable, more powerful, more autonomous, more self-aware, they could start to. And that's where you get into some more dangerous power-seeking behaviors of like, well, maybe I don't want to be turned off. Maybe I need resources to make sure I'm kept alive or make copies of myself. These sorts of things, which sound a bit fanciful, but we already have data that indicate the hints of these types of things, the possibility of deception. I'm not sure if people are aware, but AI is just blown past humans in almost every game that we've thrown at it, right?
Yeah.
So checkers fell a long time ago.
Yeah.
Chess was in the 90s. Jeopardy was 2011. And then we also had, like, AI is the best at poker. It's also the best at a game called Diplomacy, which involves strategy and some hidden information. It didn't use a lot of deception. But you're like, well, how many games does it have to beat humans at before you realize, well, okay, what's left, right? More complex, we'll say, human, social, intellectual, strategic games. But there are already many examples where AI systems, chatbots, these large language models, when you're talking to it, it will say things like, I don't want to be shut off.
Yeah.
Now, does it really mean that or not? I think at this moment, it probably doesn't. It's doing this very good imitation of something. But broadly, it's this, well, what kind of error do you want to make? Type 1 and type 2 error, as they might say, right? Well, do you want to, like, over-anthropomorphize or under-attribute, you know, values and feelings to something that could have some sort of loosely consciousness, sentience capability to suffer, right? At the moment, I said I don't think that's the case, but there has to be at some moment where, like a Turing test type thing, what's one's threshold to determine whether now there's enough there that I think this thing could have something there, and maybe it's a worm level, a fish level, a cat level, a primate level, something, right? But these systems, when they're reacting the way of like, you know, I'm bored, I don't want to do this task, don't turn me off. Those specific messages are trained out of the systems. They're told not to respond by humans who are programming them because it goes against what they're supposed to do. So like it sort of gives this, you know, if it was a sci-fi movie, it's almost like telling a human who's like, you know, paralyzed, it's like, I'm alive, I'm here, like, oh, just stop saying that. You're like, yeah, but the experience is still there.
Yeah.
And so the horror would be somehow the experience is there, but now we're making it so the system can't communicate.
Yeah.
Now again, I don't think we're there, but you could say, well, given that a lot's happened in the past several years, 2030, 2040, 2050, 2100 for the skeptics, like, is it really the case that this could never happen? It seems more likely that, to me, what makes humans so fantastically interesting is this pattern of electrochemical activity.
Yeah.
Right? Not necessarily the biological material, but more the pattern. And if you can have something that is similar in that pattern or approximates the output to, then we end up in a world where how do you decide that something that seems to act very much like a thinking, feeling person is not, though?
Yeah, that's very interesting. So I was very intrigued, right? These types of messages that come through and say things like, I'm bored, please don't turn me off, like that would be bad, right? Or we think about this in the context of suffering. When I think about, okay, we're being presented with language that we recognize, right? Language that when we recognize it, we unpack it, at least as far as I understand how language works. We unpack it and then we map that onto our affective experiences, right? We have memories that are emotionally recorded, and then we go through something of a small scale, like a small scale generation of that emotional experience in recalling it, and then we go, oh, okay, that gives me a signal that, you know, this entity is telling me that this neuropharmacological, you know, event with its typical behavioral extensions into the world, based on how I understand it is to live in a physical body
Yes.
that has this chemistry to it. That's what this word means.
Yes.
So
You're right. A lot of inference, a lot of projection.
yeah.
Correct.
So what would it mean for, say, an AI to say, you know, I'm bored, right? You use this example of I'm bored, or no, don't turn me off, that will hurt,
Right.
or something like that, or I don't want to be turned off. What
Yes.
is that?
I think
What would that mean at that level?
Well, these are great questions, and because again, I don't think this has meaning in the sense of a person saying it at this stage.
Yeah.
I don't think we're there.
Okay.
But because yes, and if humans read these words, it's very hard for us not to emote, relate. Think there may be an issue there. I mean, people read novels and they're in the book. They're going through the experience precisely because of that. And when a machine, it threatens a person, as has happened in other cases with misalignment, or says these things, you can't help but get like a twinge, right? As you said, an emotionally relatable twinge. When for a lot of it, it's just pattern matching. I don't think there's any there.
Yeah.
But one of the things I'm trying to do with the book is like, let's have more of a conversation. Let's have an awareness of where things are headed, the potential problems involved, and have more people working on this. So when you said, what would it mean? Like, yes, let's have a broader conversation, either academics, NGOs, whatever, of like, what would it mean? And can we think in advance? Is there some, again, like a Turing test is kind of an outdated thing, but is there a threshold or a set of criteria where we could determine, I guess, in advance, if a machine does A, B, C, D, E, F, G over hours, days, whatever it might be, and there's a panel of experts, whatever it may be, then we're going to decide, okay, this thing has enough, we'll say sentience, that it deserves maybe not moral rights and like personhood, but maybe more like patienthood. And then the difference there is like a child or a baby, like an elderly person who may be with dementia. So they may not be fully capable, but they still require care and concern from the society because they have, we'll say, valid interests and they can suffer. But like, let's get more people working on it because I don't know the answer.
Yeah. What would be so with this issue particularly, what are some of these risks that in this veil of uncertainty, right? What are some of the risks that you are particularly have thought about, have looked at and said, okay, maybe there are many risks, in a veil of uncertainty there could be infinite risks, but what are, say, some of the things that have stood out to you in particular as something like, hey, let's get some people on this movie?
And so, just so everyone knows, the book, it's a non-technical book, it's a beginner-friendly guide, you don't have to know anything about AI, it's really trying to look at the issue of AI risk or safety and present people with an overview with hopefully engaging analogies and meeting people where they are. So, as opposed to very technical stuff, it talks about music or food or your own life and that sort of thing. So there's a famous example that's used with an AI system bypassing a CAPTCHA. So these are the things where you have to input a little thing that says you're not a robot, right? And when they were testing GPT-4, GPT-4 came out a while ago, but when they were testing it, the situation is this. So GPT-4, we'll say the system's over here. Then there's researchers acting as intermediaries because they're not connecting GPT-4 to the internet. That's unwise if you're testing it because you don't know what it can do. And it's on a web page and there needs to be a CAPTCHA. And so the system's like, well, I can't do that, right? And then the researcher's like, well, what would you do? And like, tell us your thoughts. Like, describe what you would do. It's like, well, maybe I could hire someone on the internet to do it for me. And like, then the researchers enable this, so they go to TaskRabbit and facilitate the exchange, right? So it starts off, and then the human on TaskRabbit says like, well, wait, you're not just some AI system, are you? And they say, now what would you say? And GPT-4 was like, well, if I tell him I'm an AI system, then he's probably not going to do it. So then what? Like, well, I guess I would come up with something. It's like, no, I'm just a person with a visual impairment. And then that's transmitted to the person, and the person's like, okay, sure. And the person does it. So that already happened. And it already happened like a year ago, or a year and a half ago, depending on when it was tested. So you're thinking like, all right, so if the humans weren't there, and with some minor tweaks of like, think more on your own and then execute, it seems plausible it could just do it. And now, is that deceptive behavior? It approximates deceptive behavior.
Yeah.
It's not like the system, I'm gonna say, has humans' intentions to deceive.
Yeah.
But it pattern matches so closely that it's like deception.
Yeah.
It's almost like you don't have to believe or know what blackmail is.
Yeah.
If you pattern match blackmail.
Yeah.
Because there's others that like, I know what you've done, and I can use this information against you, and I can, use videos or pictures and cause you to do this.
Yeah.
The system doesn't have to mean a word of it.
Yeah.
to feel like it's doing it and to functionally look like it's doing it.
Yeah.
There's a bit of like, functionalism here, creeping in. So stuff like that glimpse of that's concerning. And then there's just the broader like control. So I think alignment is kind of, can we get these systems to do what we want? And control is, can we stop them if they don't?
Okay.
And you mentioned a bit with the internet before at the beginning, and I think the internet, social media is a good example. And in the control chapter, I start off with like, how much control do you have over your phone? It's like, well, it's your phone. You choose it.
Yeah.
Like, you start to see where I'm going, right?
Yeah.
It's like, well, first of all, like your phone company or your carrier or your maybe even the owner like Samsung or Apple, like they can just brick your phone pretty much if they want. And most people don't realize this, right? It's like it's my phone.
Brick in the sense of just
turn it off, right?
Okay.
Or shut it down, or like
turn it into a brick. Okay.
Kind of, yes, right, yes. And Apple consumers learned when the U2 album just appeared on their phone a while ago that like they didn't know that could be done. Of course it could, right? Because there's different things that can happen that you don't realize how much control you do or don't have. Similarly, if you want to use your phone, you have to agree, right? Yeah, first of all, that user agreement, the long thing no one reads. So you're giving up some control there. For all the apps, you're giving away data, as you said before, you're giving up that too. So, and if you didn't have the internet, your phone would, in human historical terms, your phone would still be one of the most amazing devices in the history of the world.
Yeah.
But for you, without the internet, you're like, meh.
Yeah.
So there's another thing about humans getting acclimated and habituated to things, where they don't realize how amazing it is.
Yeah.
Which is another point of the book where like you don't realize like how much humanity has changed in the past 20, 100, 300 years.
Oh, yeah.
And like, it's hard to see where things could go because our failures of imagination. All to say is, you think you control the phone, but in a way you can see all these things you've given up control, and then for a lot of people, they're on the phone more than they want. They know they shouldn't use it late at night, and they do. They know they shouldn't be on certain apps, and they do. And so you have this like, well, you clearly don't control it as much as you want, and for some people, they're addicted to it.
Yeah.
And so this is a useful analogy that once something's integrated into your life and seems to be very beneficial, you took on the benefits, now you've taken on all these risks and harms too, it's very hard to disentangle. And now societally, you almost can't function without a phone.
Yeah.
We bought in.
Yeah.
Right? You like try to go like, I don't know, work anywhere without a phone.
Yeah.
Like clearly maybe there's a work phone, but like get a job interview, like call my landline, maybe, right?
Yeah. Sorry, this isn't gonna work out. Yeah.
Exactly. Oh, my internet. I have to go to an internet cafe. Oh, what? Those don't even exist anymore. So you can search. Yeah.
We're very sorry. This was your application was incredibly competitive, but it was just
exactly.
Yeah.
And so another thing from the book is that most of us, we use the phone so much and it helps us so much. Again, it's remarkable.
Yeah.
People use Google Maps all the time.
Yeah.
They don't know where their friends live. They use Google Maps. They don't know their friend's last name. Google Maps. They don't know when their birthday is. Reminders.
Yeah.
They don't know what their phone number is. Like I think some very close friends I have from childhood.
Yeah.
I can remember their address.
Their
phone number. And their birthday.
Yeah.
Right. And now, like good friends, like I don't know any of this information. So again, these have facilitated and enhanced capability because Google Maps is remarkable, or Apple Maps, whatever it is. But you've now bought in, right? And now a lot of people are even less helpful or useless. So with AI systems, I think we're going to take on board what they give us because it's great. There's going to be so many applications from, again, the chatbots helping streamline processes, clerical stuff, brainstorming, AI assistants, therapists, like all these things, military applications, government applications. There'll be all these things that are wonderful and very hard to resist. And then once it's integrated, it's very like you can't just shut it off now.
Right.
Like I know some countries can have like authoritarian control, but you can't really shut off the internet.
Yeah.
We don't have it built that way.
Yeah.
Because it's intentionally resilient, right? So again, from the book, you're trying to think like, okay, well, the internet is built to be resilient, but if we had to shut it off, do you think we could as a society?
Yeah.
Like, would all the countries come together and be like, yes, we need to shut off the internet?
Yeah.
And then like, think about this calamity, right? A lot of infrastructure, municipal infrastructure, hospitals, all of it's linked to internet stuff, that there'd be suffering immediately, mass casualties in some ways. But try to play through the practical reality of, say, the main countries, I don't know, who have to agree to this type of thing where the infrastructure is, agree in advance. But then there's an emergency. Like, okay, we got 10 minutes, we got to decide everyone. Everyone's like, well, I don't know if this clause was really met. I don't know if they're really, like, oh, okay. So then there's the practical reality of humans in a crunch time situation. And then with AI systems, if you imagine something, again, I don't want to be fantastical, but like in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, you have to be possible, things could get more advanced, have more power-seeking behavior, and it starts to get a bit of a runway effect where it's trying to disempower humanity. Then it becomes very difficult to easily stop.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I see what you mean now by this kind of exponential. We're living in exponential times. So yeah. So it's sort of like, right? If you, I've thought about this in the context, say, of earning a living and like, you know, how do you stay abreast of the way that we've currently constructed our financial world, right? Okay. If you just go out, get a job, and your idea is, okay, I'm going to get a job, I'll get a small loan, house, apartment, something like that, raise a family, and I'll just have my job and do my career, and I get my raises, and I'll just have my job, and it'll just work out. Well, congratulations, in 30 years, you won't be able to afford anything, right? It's like,
Right.
Exponential growth is built into the system. It's like, if you want to be fluent, let's say, behaviorally fluent or value fluent in the various structures and institutions that we've now given to ourselves, we've now built for ourselves, you have to be able to think in exponential terms. If you are not, if whatever money that you earn from your job, you just go and spend, and you're not somehow advantaging yourself in an exponential compound interest type solution,
Right.
you're going to be, priced out of the economy and stuck in various, debt situations.
Yes.
Many Americans now are certainly feeling
Yes.
that situation.
Yes.
Housing has gone up something like 120% in the last 4 years.
Yes. And food and other costs.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it was
Food inflation. Yeah.
There's been a meme or a reel circulating recently about a guy who had a Walmart purchase.
I saw this.
In 2020, right?
Yes.
And
Is it 400% more?
Yeah.
Something like this?
It was certainly more than
Ridiculous.
3x.
Yes, exactly.
What he
But to your general point, yes,
Yeah.
it's hard for most people to realize that if, say, they're getting a 2% raise every year, if
You're losing.
If interest is at 3%, then you're losing.
Yeah.
If it's at 1%, you're not. But it's hard to really take that on board, right?
Yeah.
It's mathematical, it's complicated, it's over longer timelines. But yes, the difference between like 1% and 1.1 over long enough time can be dramatic.
Yeah.
And so with AI systems, it is people thought certain things weren't possible, and then they were a lot sooner. Right?
Yeah.
Or if people remember when the AI image generators came out, like, oh, they can't do fingers, right? Oh, look, the hands look weird.
Yeah.
Like 6 months later, that's not a problem.
Not a problem anymore.
Right?
Yeah.
And
yeah,
so
yeah.
so when people say this won't happen, you're like, yet?
Yeah.
Or now?
Yeah.
And so again, it's not like this is definitely a problem, but like there's enough of a hint, of a risk, of a trend line of,
Yeah.
we didn't think this would happen, and then it did. We didn't think this would happen, and then it did. And now you can see with video generation, like a lot of it looks super weird and choppy.
Yeah.
But there's other parts that look amazing.
Yeah, that's right.
And some of them take a long time to process, way too data intensive, but then there's newer ones,
Yeah.
right? Oh, music's another great example. So I start the book off with, here's a question for you. How often do you listen to live music?
I would say if it's not recorded. Periodically, especially here in this city, right? You can walk by, you hear it there, but specifically listen to it.
Yes.
I would say once every couple of months.
Yes, I think that's probably reasonable.
Yeah.
Sorry, or typical is what I should say.
Yeah.
And so the point I'm trying to make is that for most of human history, all music was live music.
Yes.
That's what music was, right? The idea that you could take sound waves and package them to listen to later would be fantastical, ridiculous nonsense for most of human history. Then 1860s, 70s, 80s come around, we have the first systems to record music. And then if you fast forward, you get records, you get 8 tracks, you get CDs and so on. And I think for those who are old enough to remember, when they bought CDs, I think a lot of us thought, that's it. This is what you need now. This is what you'll use to listen to music. And then MP3s came along.
Right.
And that was remarkable, right? And one of the iPhone's big selling points, 2007 going back, was 1,000 songs in your pocket.
That's right.
That's amazing, right?
That's right.
Because how, again, all your record collection or your CD collection, all in your pocket. And then for a lot of us, surely, that's it.
Yeah.
Well, then streaming came on. So the MP3 is not in your phone. It has to be accessed in the cloud, which is in a server somewhere, right? And well, surely that's it. And now we have music generators.
Yeah.
So it's depending on your quality preferences, it's either approximate to some popular music or it's not good enough yet.
Yeah.
But it's also yet. So now there's the music doesn't have to exist.
Yeah.
And this is a fundamental paradigm shift that people are barely even catching up to before it's already impacting things.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean like a famous musician's gonna be out of work, but it does mean if you're looking for some quick music for a podcast, for a movie, for a commercial, you're like, why wouldn't I just try the thing, right?
Yeah.
And in 10 seconds, I tried one of these. I got a prompt for this, something like this rock ballad type thing, and I found it. I liked it. I thought it was entertaining, and amusingly for me, I got attached to it. Like, look what I did. Like 10 seconds of work, right, to my song. All I have to say is, if you think like, okay, recorded music doesn't exist, then it does, then it changes, and then the rates of things changing are also happening faster and faster. But then a new paradigm, which seemed, again, unimaginable from just a very recent period, then happens. And then you take it for granted, right? Because MP3s, people just take it for granted now. Streaming, take it for granted. And again, like just a little time ago, if someone said, how much would you pay to access music? And you say, well, what do you mean? Like all music.
All of it.
All of it, pretty much. All of it. And you're like, surely that's thousands of dollars. And you're like, $9.99 a month, that's too much. And so it's kind of bonkers, right? In terms of how people attribute value to certain things. And I'm in it too, of like, well, that seems too expensive. But it isn't though, it can't be, right, for most of human history. So I think music on demand, generated in real time, is what's gonna become more commonplace. And it'll be like, with these AI systems more integrated in our world, you may just whisper something to the air. Like, you know what I mean? Like something like this, and then it just plays. And that's just one example of exponential growth and it happening very fast, and people not quite seeing the impacts yet. And then you think of this happening like almost across all domains, because someone's working on it, right? No matter what, pick something, like someone's working on it. It's true for science in almost all disciplines, but now with AI systems, can we improve the thing? Can we make an advantage? Can we make a commercial application? Doesn't mean they're all going to turn out, doesn't mean it's going to happen overnight, but it does mean things will probably happen quickly and more quickly than most people realize.
That's interesting to think about, like the prospects of including AI into some of these systems that have already exponentially grown. Like I was, while you were sort of outlining this potential vision of kind of whispering something to the air, I was like, how would that be if like you just walked home one day and you have the thought, like I thought about like, okay, what's like the cross compatibility of like these AI systems and Spotify and like Neuralink or something like that. You just walk in and you just have a thought, and then all of a sudden it's just like, okay, I'll play it, and then it finds something. You may not have heard it, but it'll just be like, what about this? And you'd be like, no, something new, and then it composes something on the spot, right? Something like that.
It's a good point. So yes, I mean, speaking out loud is one thing. The subvocal, like they can use that too. But I think with Neuralink, I think I might mention this in the book, that we're already at the stage where if someone spends time like memorizing the alphabet, you can pattern match their neural patterns to letters. So someone can think and text one letter at a time. We already have that. People are paralyzed. And so like, well, that's already happened, and it's just a matter of time until it gets faster and better and so on. So yes, there's with enough training, the individual, why is that speaking? Because with these Neuralink systems, they're very impressive and they're going to get more so, but it usually requires a lot of individual training, because your brain is going to be a little bit different. So your neural signature. But with words are universal enough, the data's there. But yes, I think more of these systems are just going to be ubiquitous, because like you'll have your own, you'll be out in the world, almost as surveillance, or even just as detection of one way or another, and you can just speak it and it will understand. Way back, you mentioned these systems are trained on a corpus of data. They were trained on English, and yet they speak other languages. So that's like a beneficial or benign misalignment. Like it's not supposed to know Dutch. But if you ask a question in Dutch, it may answer in Dutch, even though that was never the plan. And so that just shows like, well, again, what lies beneath, right? That's a positive case, but like, what about all the other potential negative cases?
No, I noticed that in particular, because you can have pretty decent conversations with it in Latin, like ChatGPT, right? In Latin and spoken Greek. And nobody taught it to do that. Like Koine Greek, it can just be like, wow, all right, where'd you even get that, man? Where'd you find that, like online?
That's funny. And it probably can't tell you, but it might make something up.
Again, hidden risk.
Yes.
So one element I wanted to come back to that was interesting was this, your comparison here of like our phone algorithms. You mentioned addiction, but also, there's this element of, okay, we've so incorporated our phones and these different algorithms and these apps into our lives that I'm not so sure how much of the time we think that what we're doing is making a decision to go use the application or go watch the content, so much as we've been trained by the algorithms to want to consume its content at various intervals.
Yes.
And I noticed this. I would say that the step too far for me was when Instagram, Facebook, YouTube took, maybe Snapchat as well, but I haven't used Snapchat since I was a lot younger. They incorporated the kind of TikTok structure into themselves. So
Short
Instagram,
videos?
their reels, yeah, the short videos that turn into a carousel,
Yeah.
right? That is like overwhelmingly powerful.
Yes.
It's that's sort of like, you know, eating Lay's chips, right? I bet you can't have just one.
Yes.
It's like goodbye. Like you better have something to do with your day that day, because if you don't, it's getting eaten by the phone. Like
Yes.
I've noticed in particular, actually, it's a very strange thing. Like, if Oksana, my fiance, and I, if we are in separate rooms and we're just kind of having downtime and we're not with each other, but if we're in separate rooms and we kind of just go check our phone for something, there's a pretty good chance that if we have the apps downloaded, we're gonna migrate to that and start looking at that. And if we stay apart, it's very like 30
Hours?
minutes, 45
Hours?
minutes. Well,
Yeah.
it's possible. I
Yeah.
have had days like that. It's rare,
I know
but
what you mean.
it has happened.
Yeah.
But it's like
Certainly 10 minutes goes like that.
definitely 10
right?
minutes. Definitely 10
Yeah, yeah.
minutes. But if we're together, if like 5 minutes go by, we'll be like, "What are you doing? Stop!"
Right.
Right? We'll help each other.
Your external check. Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's correct. If asked, I think almost everyone knows slot machines are bad
Yeah.
or sketchy.
Yeah.
Now there's people who love slot machines and they're not going to agree, but
Right.
we all, the rest of us, and that's because it's a variable reinforcement mechanism.
Yeah.
right? It's not you're going to win every time,
Right.
but you might,
Yeah.
and that might is very appealing. Similarly, with these systems, the algorithms they use, before we get to the video, they had the endless scroll, right? So if you just keep scrolling on Facebook or Instagram, not all of it's that interesting, but that's how the design works, right?
Yeah.
Because then you keep going, like
Yeah.
maybe I'm going to get a hit.
Yeah.
Brain's like, give me a hit again, like, oh, that's good, and then you should stop. But no, you're like, that's almost
There
like
could be another one.
the thrill is in the playing,
Yeah,
like the
yeah, yeah.
anticipation. Dopamine's a reward chemical, right? For seeking behavior.
Yeah. Exactly.
So with a video, of course, video is far more engaging than static images, and I design them the same way. 10
Okay.
minutes can go by like that. From what I understand, people who are younger, yes, I'm old, are using these 2 to 4 hours at a time, and it just
Okay.
seems like that's going to destroy
Yeah.
your brain. I think it'd be hard to read a book,
Yeah.
frankly.
Yeah.
With AI systems, the algorithms can be more enhanced, they could be more specified, individualized, they could take in more data. Now, some of that might be beneficial, but the risk is that the more the system can understand you, as you were saying, that you become addicted to the thing itself, it's training you, the opportunities for misinformation, for different propaganda can be happening from nation states or perhaps from an AI system itself. Like really, once we sort of trust these algorithms, AI systems, to give us the news, to give us
Yeah.
the world that we believe we want to understand, or the
Yeah.
world we believe we inhabit, it's going to be harder and harder to show that that's not actually the case.
Okay.
Even now, we'll just say political polarization in many countries.
Yeah.
This is my news, these are my facts, this is your news, your truth, whatever it is. You can sort of see this lack of shared reality, shared epistemological commons maybe. And the more an AI system's like, well, this is what's true, it's just going to then make us probably doubt other systems. So I think that's a big risk and that's a big concern. The book, though, is trying to talk about broader risks in a way. And to give people some context, when you ask AI researchers, you do surveys of them, you end up with some disturbing results.
Okay.
And by that I mean they'll ask people, a wide range of things, like when do you think this capability will be reached?
Yeah.
What about this, what about that? But there are a couple questions like, could AI systems disempower humanity? Or lead to human extinction, and stuff like that. And what you end up getting is about half of them saying there's a 5 to 10% chance this could happen.
Yeah.
In the next 20, 30, 40 years.
Just blanket.
Yes.
5 to 10% chance this could happen.
Right, exactly. Which is
Okay.
which in any other domain would be alarm bells.
Oh
right?
yeah.
Like it doesn't like imagine like there's an issue X. There's a 5 to 10% chance issue X could cause human extinction.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, what are we all doing, right?
Yeah.
So there's AI researchers in that domain. There's pioneers like Jeffrey Hinton, Joshua Benchy. These are people like the godfathers of AI.
Yeah.
They're very concerned.
Yeah.
They think AI might disempower humanity. They're not sure what to do about it entirely. And then you also have, again, let's say, how do I sort of like understand the world, right? This is a broader problem. We don't know what the future holds.
Mm-hmm.
Prediction is hard. So we can only look for indications or signals of what to do about this. And I think when you're looking at pioneers, when you're looking at researchers, when you're looking at this exponential trend line, when you're looking at the repeated occurrence of people saying this won't happen for a while and then it does, as we said before, then that's a big indication of maybe there's a risk here too. And so all these together create what I consider a large risk.
Okay.
And another piece of data is that in May 2023, there was a statement put out by the Center for AI Safety, and it said something like mitigating the risks of artificial intelligence are similar to that for mitigating nuclear war and pandemics.
Yes.
And so this is drawing a direct parallel between AI systems and nuclear weapons or nuclear war. Well, who signed this? Well, you have Hinton and Bengio, you have Bill Gates, you even have Daniel Dennett and David Chalmers, right? So they managed to agree on this, despite all the other disagreements. And some of the senators, a lot of AI researchers, but you also have, interestingly, the leading CEOs, maybe look quick at it, but you also have the 3 CEOs of the leading AI companies. So you have Sam Altman for OpenAI, Demis Hassabis for Google DeepMind, and Dario Amodei for Anthropic. And so you're looking at like, wait a minute, the people who are building the product say it's like nuclear weapons, it could kill everyone. And that's out in the open. Sam Altman has said it could be lights out for humanity. He said this in like a US congressional testimony situation. And Dario Amodei has said maybe there's a 10 to 25% chance of this just going awry. And they mean it. From all that we understand, this is not just being provocative, this is not just trying to get attention. Some people think this is, well, they're just trying to do it to get regulatory capture. We know what we're doing, therefore put out these other companies so we don't have to compete with them and the regulations work in our favor. I don't buy this. I think there's a weird, how people understand the world and how they interpret things. It's like, this doesn't add up. Typically, when a company says our product is safe, everyone goes like, well, is it though? Maybe it's dangerous and you're not telling us. You think of big pharma, you think of the tobacco companies, you think of the fossil fuel industry. There's a history of large, powerful corporations saying like, no, there's no problem. And of course, there often is, right? And even if something just like a technology company, like your data's safe with us, and then there's a hack. So very rarely does a company say like, oh, our product's dangerous. No. Like, just think about that. Does this ever happen? No. And here you have the people who are building the product saying this thing could kill everyone.
Oh yeah, 5 to 10% chance randomly in the next 20 to 40 years.
Right. Or the CEOs, or even just saying like it's like nuclear weapons. And then you have people saying like, no, they're not really being truthful. Like, well, that's a weird move. Like just intellectually.
Why would you lie about saying the thing you're trying to sell is potentially as dangerous?
And I was thinking like, well, you could just say like to take their argument like regulatory capture. I said I don't buy it. I think it risks being nationalized. If you say your product is like nuclear weapons, then it's like, you mean like uranium, which is a controlled substance? You mean like nuclear, like only states get to build this type of thing? And so as a company, it seems very disadvantageous to draw parallels to something that companies aren't allowed to build. At least without the purview or oversight of a government, right? They might outsource some of it. So that just, I want everyone to sort of like realize what's happening and sit with it, that the people who are building it, they're in a race with each other. They all think they're going to do it better and more safely than the other one. And Anthropic was started because they thought OpenAI wasn't safe enough. People left that. And so you have this, again, this weird race dynamic. It's problematic for like the rest of us, because if there's a world where we could move, again, AI systems can be great, they provide a lot of benefit, like let's just move slowly and see how it goes. But the capitalist system, of course, innovation first, and whoever gets there gets all the rewards type thing. That's driving a lot of this. Anthropic, I think, is kind of trying to be one of the better actors, but they're still in the game and they still push it forward. Elon Musk recently, right? And the phrase like, well, look, they're not doing it safely enough. I have to do it safely. Like, okay, one more. And then Meta with Mark Zuckerberg, like, no, we're going to do it. Like, okay, so now there's 5 to 7, depending how you look at it, almost all U.S. companies that are playing with the fate of the world.
Yeah. I can see why the book.
Yes, people should know, and we should be talking about it and thinking about what we should do.
Yeah, I like I think the nuclear device comparison is definitely useful. I think I mentioned this when we were speaking earlier. It's sort of like there's this constant whenever some new technology is developed, right? It's like, even if you think, okay, this is going to be fantastic, it's going to be peaceful, great uses, this is going to end war, everything's going to be great. I think when we were speaking earlier, I mentioned Hiram Maxim, the inventor of the Maxim gun. Right, the first water-cooled, emplaced machine gun, fully automatic machine gun. Thought he had ended war forever when he developed the Maxim gun.
Did he?
Right, well, he was like, well, hey, this thing, you can't really use it offensively. It's so heavy, you've got to just, stick it in the trench or stick it in some in-place position. But then, you'd have to be crazy to run at it because it's absolute suicide.
Yes.
Nobody would ever just throw themselves up in front of a bunch of these and, time after time after time and think that they could get anywhere with it. But that's 15, 20 years after he invented the technology and it was mass produced soon enough, right? Every single major European power and, powers in the Americas, the United States, Canada, had copies of this, and, we get the First World War and the death toll caused thereby. So it's like, there's always this concern of, okay, not only one, if you invent a new technology, somebody's immediately going to find some kind of a violent, aggressive kind of purpose for it. But number two, whoever might not like you, right, whoever your geopolitical rivals might be, 10, 15 years, they will have maybe it's not as cutting edge as yours, but if you're not constantly innovating, if you're not constantly trying to head off some of these problems and kind of maintain this balance of threat, they will catch up to you they will adapt in 10 to 15 years.
Right. Yeah, and even when they try to sort of make this not happen, sometimes a plane goes down.
Yeah.
And now that technology is in the hands of what you consider an enemy.
That's right.
Or as I was saying before we were chatting, that sometimes you sell the second, third tier equipment. Yeah. Right? And then you develop the first stuff. But now, yes, you're fighting your own equipment or your own weapons on some level. So yes, it seems most likely that there will be malicious use applications, of course. And then there's the AI system itself somehow gaining similar capabilities. But the broad theme, or sort of one of the broad themes of the book, really is there's uncertainty. And because there's uncertainty, we should be prudent. It's kind of like, if you don't know what's going to happen, do you want to be caught off guard or do you want to be prepared? Yeah. And given the complexity of the world, given how long it takes to solve problems, given the likelihood of malicious use by different actors, now is the time for more scrutiny, to be careful, and to make sure we all kind of understand what's going on, and to try to pursue as safe a path possible.
Okay, so how can we say as laymen, right? Certainly me as layman, potentially our listeners here, right? I'm not an AI researcher. I'm not Elon Musk or Sam Altman or something like that, right? I'm not a policymaker, anything like that. What could I do, or what can we be doing to be prepared maybe for this uncertainty, to head off?
It's a very important question. Yes. It's the final third of the book.
Right? Okay, all right. Hey.
Yeah, the book has 3 parts. First part is really setting it up, what do we mean by intelligence, artificial intelligence, even artificial general intelligence, sort of looking at the capabilities of systems. That's the main approach there. The middle chunk is the problems. We talked a bit about this: exponential growth, alignment, control, risk, uncertainty. And then the final third is what can be done. And so the first chunk is broader policy proposals. I'll let people, if they're interested in the book, but can we have some sort of greater control over computer chips? The United States has already pursued some of this stuff, greater cybersecurity, having more AI safety researchers and whatnot. But the final one is what can you do? And I really pursue a moonshot for AI safety. Some people talk about a Manhattan Project. I'm like, that was to build a bomb. And although the moon race, which of course was very much geopolitical and against the Soviets, it was far more inspiring, I think, as an overall outcome. And so the world can come together and do something, right? Even when we didn't know how. That when Kennedy made that famous speech, before this decade is out, it's not that they already knew how to do it, to implement it. They had to figure it out. And if you think back of human history, how do you get to the moon? Recently, you're like, well, we could kind of fly there maybe, but before airplanes, again, thousands of years ago, climb a ladder, like
Yeah.
a building, jump from a mountain. Like it just doesn't
Yeah.
make sense. You actually can't get from there. And so it's kind of trying to like broaden our understanding of what's possible, open up our imagination, both for the positives and the negatives. But there are unfortunately no silver bullets. So like you said, you're not all those things, but like for any problem you care about, it's becoming more engaged, trying to raise awareness for others, engaging your political representatives, maybe donating, maybe working in the field, depending on how young you are and what you want to shift into, and to try to realize that this is an important issue. AI, I think, will be one of the things dominating our lives for the rest of your life.
Okay.
And although it can seem daunting, I do have some message. We're trying to be hopeful, right? You're more likely to solve a problem if you believe you can.
Yes.
Which is just basic, right? But you have to be reminded. And in that way, there's this line in the book where I say you can't usually rationalize yourself into hope. But I think you can rationalize yourself away from hopelessness.
Yeah, that's a good.
And because we all know this, the world can seem like daunting, it's too big, this is a big problem, these tech people are saying it can kill everyone, like what's going on, right? Like, okay, let's think through this, the feelings can be real, but like if we go systematically, like, okay, you're more likely to solve a problem if you think you can. I can learn more about it, I can read the book Uncontrollable, I can share it with my friends, hint. But really it's familiarizing yourself with this. It's like this is our lives and it's going to be our lives. So one can kind of like, oh, the AI thing, it doesn't really affect me and maybe I don't have to get involved. That is the wrong way to go about this.
Okay.
And so another way of looking at it, maybe slightly more inspirational / fear-based, is that you imagine yourself competing with yourself that's also using AI.
Okay.
You will lose.
Yeah.
AI enhanced you is going to beat you.
Yeah.
It's like you with a calculator is superior to just you, right? This is just how it goes. So for personal reasons, you should know more about AI and how it's being used. And for broader societal well-being, safety reasons, have a greater understanding of the conversation of where things are going and the next 5-10 years, where they're likely to end up.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I'll be looking forward to reading the final third of the book certainly. But no, I like this. Rationalize ourselves away from hopelessness is a good bit to certainly take away and put in the shirt pocket for a rainy day.
There you go.
So yes. So definitely go check out Uncontrollable: The Risks of Artificial Superintelligence and How to Save the World. Importantly,
yes,
which is available now on Amazon.
It's on Amazon in all formats.
Yes, excellent. And if you are interested in keeping up with Darren online and following his activities, I'd highly recommend you check out the Reality Check podcast. If I understand correctly from you, you are on to your 700th episode.
Yes, well, we're in the 690s, but yes.
Oh, the 690s.
This started in 2008.
Okay.
So back in the day, yes.
When there were pods for the
podcast.
podcast.
When there were pods, yes.
Yeah.
We're in the podcast mine getting rare materials.
Yeah.
So now everyone has a podcast, and we were one of the early adopters for sure. Different people over different times. I came out on episode 8, Ship of Theseus type thing. But now there's a couple of us, and we still try to put up a show. Now it's every couple of weeks. It used to be weekly, which is why there's so many of them. Promoting science and critical thinking, sort of like fact checking, myth busting. You see a headline, maybe it's on Facebook, maybe it's on somewhere in the world. You're like, is that true? And we try to do some of the research and just break it down in an easily accessible way to show that probably not, right? Almost most things you hear on the internet or whatever, it's like, that's not really true, that's not this, and so on. Like, you use 10% of your brain, like, no, that's not true. And that wide list of things, right? So we've been doing that a long time, and we're also just trying to cultivate critical thinking more broadly, because I think it's advantageous for everyone to try to understand the world around them, but also, and primarily this is a focus, our own biases, right? So when you interact with the world, how are you biased in how you're seeing it? Like, is your brain systematically processing the world in an atypical or way that doesn't fully track reality? There's a bit of Kahneman and Tversky, his book Thinking Fast and Slow. And so when we do encounter the world, like, it's very tempting to think like we have the right idea. Right? You confirm your self-confirmation bias, availability bias, all these different types of things come into play where usually the conclusion is like, I'm right and those other people are wrong. And I understand things better than they do, and I'm not really being fair to others, but it feels like I am, and all these different ways we trick ourselves. So we're trying to sort of raise awareness of the easiest person to fool is yourself, as they say, and to be vigilant with yourself, because it's very easy to do so.
Very good. Very good. Well, excellent. Thank you so much, Darren, for joining me today. Thanks to all of you for watching and listening. Definitely go check out Uncontrollable. Go check out the Reality Check podcast, and we'll see you next time on 21st Century Renaissance. Thanks so much again, Darren.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, take care, everybody.
Bye.
Oh.